This is the Next Bite of Life podcast, the place to be to hear personal stories from expats, digital nomads, and everybody else taking their next bite of life. Welcome to another episode of the Next Bite of Life podcast. My name is Kem Kem. Today I have Caneisha Berry on the podcast, and she is the life coach and relationship coach on berrythoughtfullife.com. Say hello to everyone, Caneisha.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you for being here. I know we had a little bit of problem with my scheduling because we were on opposite sides of the world and I just got it completely wrong. So I'm glad that you were able to come after all and we were able to connect. So thank you so much for being here.
I'm just excited that you invited me. And, living abroad, I should know better than to assume. And I usually try to talk in terms of like day and times, but I did forget to mention I was on the East Coast right now. So it's completely understandable.
You're back home, but we'll get to that just a little bit later. I want to see how you made your round trip all the way from the US, right? You're originally from North Carolina, is it?
Yes. No, you're right.
So
North
you've
Carolina.
been an expat. Well, actually, let's go back to the very beginning of that. How did you like? Where did you grow up? How was it like growing up in North Carolina?
So I grew up in a very small town called Ahoskie, North Carolina. Most people have never heard of it. It prides itself on being the only one. But it's a very rural.
Mhm. I'm like, I never heard of
You won't
it.
until you randomly meet another someone like me from there. But it's a very rural town, and so I grew up at a time where it wasn't. I didn't really experience racism. I just understood that there was like them and us. And I knew to like we lived
Yes.
over here and they lived over there. Um, so I
Hmm.
and I also grew up in because it was a small town. uh, People like I remember my mom saying to me when I was when I was young, she was like, "I'm never gonna leave a hosky." And like a lot of people thought like that. They love living there. They don't have any plans to move. Where I said to my mom, I was like, because she says, "I'm never gonna leave my mom." I said, "Well, know that I'm gonna leave you," because I could not wait to go. So I always had this dream inside of me to like travel the world, but I didn't understand it because I was a kid. And my mom said I used to cry as a
Yeah.
little girl. She said
Yeah.
you would cry about like why do we have to live here? And she said she couldn't understand it because she was like you hadn't been anywhere. So I always say that like the dreams and the
Wow.
vision is inside of us. Because I knew like my little
Yes.
soul, little spirit knew at 5 and 7 and 11 because people would say, "What are you gonna do when you grow up?" I'm like, "I'm gonna see the world," and then they would make me give them a answer, right? Because that answer is not acceptable.
I'm sure at that point the world probably meant like the rest of America, right? They had no idea that you had dreams even beyond that.
Yeah, I don't even know how I knew, but I was so curious about. Like I'm a God girl. That means for me, it means like I literally believe there's a God and I read the Bible. But I also believe him to be like this huge, amazing being. And you tell me that he created this earth, so why am I only gonna see this part of it? Like that didn't make sense to me. I wanted to go see what he made. And so I wasn't limited, like I wasn't thinking just America. I just was thinking the world. I wasn't smart enough as a kid to go and pick a globe and say, I want to go to Africa, I want to go to China. Like I didn't know to do that. I just knew that I need to see something bigger than this right here in North Carolina and Virginia and Washington D.C. and Jamaica. Like that wasn't it. It was something more.
I always had the urge to travel and I knew I wanted to travel. Like, if you'd asked me when I was young, it's like, I don't want any kids. I don't want to get married. I just want to travel. And that's it. And that's what I focused on because I knew since I was a child. So it's incredible to hear that it's not just me because sometimes you feel like, my mom always used to say, like, my God, I think I sent you like to America way too soon. And because everybody else went back home and got married and did the whole thing. And me, I just wanted to travel. So it's kind of interesting that you had that vision really when you were young and you were able to make it happen. So, how did you get out of North Carolina then?
So, actually, I lost my dream because I began to buy into what everyone around me said. So I did what everyone said do: go to college, get a good education, get a good job, get married, have kids. And just remember being miserable. And my cousin had moved to Dubai. She was from lived in New Jersey and moved to Dubai, and I was so excited
Mhm.
for her. And I could not. I was just like, I think this is so awesome. When everyone else in my family was saying, "Aren't you scared?" and all that, I'm like, I'm gonna come visit you, And so after like 3 years after that, my husband actually was the one who really made it happen in the sense that he. We had never discussed it. He took a job. He came home one day and he says, "Hey, I randomly applied for this job abroad, and they actually contacted me." He was like, "And since Juanica lives in Dubai, I thought you would be like okay with trying the UAE." I'm like, "Sure."
So, how long were you in Dubai?
We left America in 2010, so 10 years. We were in that area for 3 years. We was actually in a smaller area called Alain, but it was good. It was good for family. It was beautiful. I could drive to Dubai in an hour and 20 minutes. I could drive to Abu Dhabi in like an hour 30 minutes. Um, I absolutely like I remember saying and thinking my soul belongs here.
Yeah. Now, I know that when you first got there, everything wasn't all, roses, and there were some problems. And if you don't want to discuss that, it's fine. I know your husband went there first, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then you followed after?
yeah. So no, I don't mind discussing because that's part of our journey. So actually, yeah, my husband thought it was a good idea to start dating because I wasn't there, and I'm like, no, you don't date when you're married. That's not a good idea.
But if you're Muslim, it's like it's
What
fine.
is husband saying? We don't do that. But interesting enough, what we found out was both of us was really broken, and we don't
Yeah,
talk about that in marriage and in relationships. Like, no one comes to the altar with their brokenness and say, here it is. So, we dress up all pretty, and although we had been married for 12 years, no one taught us the importance of having a vision for our marriage.
mm,
Even though we thought we just wanted to be happily married, but we didn't know what that meant, right?
yeah,
So what God did
mhm,
for us during that time was he exposed everything first of all. So this relationship that my husband was having outside of the marriage affair, it was an emotional affair. Um, when it came all out, we decided, I said, okay. My first instinct, of course, like most women, okay, no problem. I'll just pack my things, go back home, and you keep the kids because yeah, I've quit my job.
yeah.
Really was
They are yours, right?
right. But what we did was he opened up. And what was loving to me was my husband wanted to know as desperately as I did why he did it. Right.
Yeah,
So he had this heart that he did not think it was right. He didn't think it was okay. He didn't downplay it. He was like, what's wrong with me? Something is wrong. He went for counseling. I reached out to a lady who she dealt with women who had been betrayed by their husbands. And that's how I saw it. Like, of course, I entered into the situation with the victim mentality. You did this to me. But because of what I
yeah,
learned, I had to begin to realize what I brought to the marriage. And listen, that's not to say I blame myself or tell any woman that, if a man cheats on you, it's your fault. But as women, as humans, we have to admit that if we're in relationship, we brought something into that thing too. And so I was a big
mhm,
trigger for my husband. I couldn't allow him to openly share with me his pain from his past. Because I grew up in a place where you, just as long as everything look okay, like as long as it looks good, it's
yeah,
okay. And so I was always
mhm,
about what it looked like, not what it really was. And so when God began to show us what it really was, I was like, oh wow, this is really nasty. This is ugly. But it was this ugly, beautiful thing because it began to show me the real me, and it began to show
Mhm.
me the real him. And so these two very broken people was able to now connect at such a deeper level, even though we've been married for 12 years. We begin to be exposed false thoughts and beliefs that we had about each other, about marriage, about relationships. um, God began to reveal to us our brokenness, the things that in our past that hurt us, that made us think the way we did, made us feel unworthy, unacceptable, like devalued, and so how that was affecting the way we was doing marriage and what we was trying to get from one another that wasn't available.
Okay.
And so even in that devaluing, like my husband just was trying to get validation, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't
Yeah.
even, and that's what he learned. He's like, this is not even about this woman. Like, truth of the matter is, like, really don't, I don't really have these feelings for her that I thought I did. She validated me
Yeah.
at a time when you wasn't
Yeah.
validating me. And now, like, so it's this horrible thing because, so I never addressed the woman because to me, she wasn't, um, I always say she wasn't there on June 22nd, 1997. That was my wedding day. So she owes me nothing.
Mhm.
So I didn't need to know
Yeah.
her story, how she got, I hadn't, other than the email, that the only reason we had that conversation was because I literally opened his email and they was communicating is how I found out.
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
jumped into the email to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
are y'all having an affair?" And they was like, "Ooh, oh, whoa."
It's like, I'm sorry, what am I reading here?
Right.
Hello, third
Yeah.
party person over here.
Right.
Well, I think
And
it's absolutely wonderful that you were able to come out of it stronger on the other side. Because, like you said, I think a lot of women would have just said, okay, I'm packing my bags and I will see you, in court or whatever it is. But you realize that you had 12 years into this relationship, you had, kids, and you
yeah,
wanted to make sure that everybody was going to be fine. Is
yeah.
that what made you get into coaching?
Yes. It was definitely, so I teach this, and I had started writing a book about it and I never finished it, but it was like called My Greatest Pain Led to My Greatest Purpose, or A Purpose in My Pain, because it was just like I said, it was amazing. Almost like for me at that time, it felt like a love
Yeah.
story that I got to have with God, and that I got to have with myself, and I got to have with Andre, of this growth of
Mhm.
being able to identify, like what I call now the real me versus the fake me, who I didn't even know I was fake. I didn't even know I was asleep.
Yeah.
So I got into coaching because the lady that was helping me, she kept saying, "Oh my God, Caneisha, you really should become a coach." And I said, "Why do you say that?" And she says, "Because every time I have a call with you, I leave so encouraged and so empowered." I was like, "But I'm paying you." She's like, "That's why you need to become a."
Wow. Well, that's unusual. Yeah.
She's an amazing woman and she just taught me so much. But like I began this because she had a ministry and I actually was going to work with her in her ministry. But over time, I realized our vision was so different.
Well, you have to go out and do your own thing. So when you decided to become
Yeah.
you chose relationship coaching as opposed to life coaching, or I mean, that is like a special niche, isn't it?
I always tell people when they contact me, like the relationship that I'm going to focus on, that I want to help you with, is the one you're having with yourself, so that you can create a better relationship with your spouse or your children or your coworkers, or even with that dream that you have. But until we know ourselves, we don't know like who's showing up in the marriage, who's showing up um, in these relationships, and what do you do with your anger, your frustration, your bitterness? Are you aware that you have this brokenness, what I call soul wounds, that are actually dictating your life? And until I can, if you're not aware of those, I want to introduce you to them. I want to introduce you to the messages of your soul wound. And then I want you to know that you don't have to keep letting your hurt and your pain make your decisions. So whenever I hear people say stuff like, "Well, I'm never doing this again," or "Forget that, I'm cutting these people out of my life," I'm like, that's your wound making a decision for you, and one that you will ultimately regret. So I've learned that when we make decisions from our wound and not from our healed place of like love, peace, joy, then we tend to make huge decisions that we regret.
Decision and your wounds coming out, it doesn't really have to be your husband, does it? It can be your parent, your sister, your, it can be anybody that you love. It's not just, you're not coaching them just for marriage. You're coaching them for everybody else around them. It's,
That's what, like, I'm always tickled when I offer different workshops or my book is called Think Your Way to a Better Marriage. But single people will reach out to me. They're like, well, I don't need this because I'm single. I said, you have relationships. Like, no, I'm not in a relationship. You have a relationship with your parents. You have a
mm,
relationship with your coworkers. You have friends. And
yeah.
they're like, oh, you have a relationship with yourself. And I'm just always amazed when people hear the word relationship, they always think mate.
Yeah, it's true. Because that is the first thing you think about. Because, like you said, you end up joining society and thinking the way they think. You grow up, you have different things that you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to do them. You're supposed to go up, get married, go to school, have the house, and then the thing, and then so everything is all worked out. So now, when it doesn't align, you're just like, whoa. So they're conditioned to think automatically when you mention relationship that it has to be, with their partner or their husband or wife or whatever, and they don't realize that they have relationships with everybody else too, and indeed with themselves. Because like you said, if you don't love yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Who's going to love
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a great way because it's the self-awareness and, the emotional part of it that makes you understand yourself better, makes you stronger. I think that's a fantastic thing to do because I see a lot of people. Now, do you work with expats as well, or is it just anybody?
Interesting enough, because when I really got started, I got my training when I was in the UAE, so my coaching practice didn't really start until I was in China. So I've worked with people
Hmm,
literally from all around the world. So I thought it was like that was the beautiful thing about living as an expat and living in China. I've coached people from
yeah.
Germany, from New Zealand, Australia, China, South Africa, like literally
Wow.
from all around the world. And it's been a beautiful experience and opportunity. Um, because my whole goal is just to help, particularly like I focus on women, but I have had male clients. But I just love
Yeah.
helping people what I call awakening. So my coaching program is called Awakening. And I call it that because when you can wake up, like when you can wake up to
Mm-hmm.
that way of thinking and those emotions that are driving your life, and you don't even know. Like, so here's how I know when people are asleep is when I hear people say, I don't understand why this keeps happening to me. I don't get why I keep meeting like the same type of guy. I don't understand why my relationships keep
Hmm.
ending. I don't know why I can't seem to manage my money. Like, every time I get something, it turns out the exact same way. That to me is all the warnings that a
Hmm.
person is asleep. And it's okay because I was asleep, right, for years. And that was my story. I don't know why I can't get right with my money. I don't know why. Seem like I
Yeah.
do one good thing and I fall back 5 times. It's all because without the awakening of your thoughts and your emotions, because we've been driven by our emotions and we don't understand them, and you may think, well, I'm not an emotional
Hmm.
person, but you are. Like, we are created to be emotional beings, and so you're either using your emotions or they are using you. And when you're not awakened
Mm.
to what do I do when, or why do I do this,
Yeah.
why do I keep having that, when you just don't know. And so I call that kind of like a zombie like state where you are alive,
Yeah.
like the Walking Dead. You're moving through
But
life.
you just existed. So you were in Dubai for how long?
We were there for 3 years.
What was it like living in Dubai as an expat?
For me, because I didn't work in Dubai. My husband worked. I was actually homeschooling my children at the time. I loved it. Like, there was nothing. about
Yeah.
the UAE I didn't like. um, I love the colors. I love the smell.
I know it's very expensive there, isn't it?
Yes, it's beautiful. Such a beautiful country. The people, like, I never had, like, maybe had one negative encounter where an Arabic lady decided to get in front of me in line. And because I said something, she was appalled. And I was appalled that she got in front of me. Um, and so they would always go, "Where are you from?"
I know, of course, right?
Because honestly, they're, yeah, during that time, being of dark skin, they would assume I was from some part of Africa. And
Of course.
I was actually told that as you American Black women, you have too much confidence. Like, really?
Well, yeah. It's like, yeah, because they're used to people being submissive and they just don't understand it, right? It's like, I don't think somebody like get it back on the line, you know? Wow.
Like, what?
And to say that to your face, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was so
Like,
tickled.
let me reach out and slap you.
I wanted to be like, well, at least you recognize.
That must have been hard to get used to.
Yeah, it was like because when I first got there, like my husband had told me all these things, babe, you got to be careful of this, you can't do that. And then I got to know some of the ladies that had lived there for a while who were Americans, and they was like, Kanisha, no, honey, you don't just let these people do what they want to do. You have every right to stand up for yourself. You have every right to acknowledge that you're being mistreated. I was like, oh, okay. And so that's
Yeah.
what I started doing. Just having a voice.
Oh, that's great. That's
Mm.
great. So it was an expensive place, but it was really nice. Now, were you allowed to like drink, openly since it's a Muslim country?
It was, I always thought it was the funniest, cutest thing. Um, so we could go to hotels, like and sit by the
Yeah.
pool and order drinks. We can go to the nightclubs and things, and which were usually at a hotel and order drinks. They even had this like liquor store where you're supposed to have a liquor license. So you go and you get
Hmm.
some card to say that you're allowed to buy alcohol because you aren't a Muslim. Um, so we
Ah.
could go and purchase alcohol and have parties at the house and that kind of thing. But it was always so funny because then the Emiratis would be there in their big SUV vehicles and honk the horn, and then the people would come out to
Hmm.
bring them their alcohol. So that's why I always thought it was
So
so
they were
funny.
drinking, but not really
Yeah,
drinking.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
know
think
being from
you
Nigeria,
mentioned
there's
this
a
before
lot
I
of,
said it earlier. As long as it looks good, it's good.
yeah. I mean, I know like big Muslim populations like in Nigeria, and they sit around and they will drink you under the table. That's
Yeah.
just the way it is. But, the religion forbids alcohol. But hey, as long as everybody's having fun, So what made you leave Dubai?
Um, it was let me see. So it was really just a kind of weird time. My husband had gotten to a place where he hated it because he worked there, and
Yeah.
the education system. He was like, "I'm not teaching. I am literally going to work every day to keep kids from fighting." And
Ah.
then he was being asked to fudge grades, and
Mhm.
and not just him, but like the Western teachers, and when the teachers wouldn't do it, they changed the grading scale. He came home. He said,
So
"Babe,
just so they could pass the kids, right?
yeah, like 100 to a 60 is an A, a 60 to a 30
Wow.
is a B." I'm like, "What? In real numbers?" He's
Wow.
like, "Yeah." So and I thought he's like, "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep showing up for a job every day without teaching. I'm not learning anything. I'm losing my skills." And so I was like,
Mhm.
"But can't you just stick it out?"
But I like it.
He's like, "I can't." And so he got the job in China, and it was so different. Like, and I could see the difference in what he meant. Like, those kids were excited to learn. The level of discipline, the expectations that the parents and staff and the teachers had on these kids, it was like night and day.
Hmm. So you went directly from Dubai to China? Or did you
We
come
had,
back to America for a spell?
yeah, we was in America for about 4 months
Gotcha.
before we got the job in China.
Now, was it easy for him to find jobs in China?
It, you know what? Like it was just weird because Andre would like once we got abroad, right? Now we're looking at jobs abroad. He was looking at actually we was interviewing with a company in Japan of all places. And
Hmm.
then I got excited about Japan because we had a friend who had moved from the UAE to Japan and she said it was really nice there. And then like within us talking about Japan, couple of felt like a week or so later, he was like, I landed a job in Beijing. I said, wait, that's not in Japan. He's like, no, it's China. I was like, I'm in China. And he's like, well,
Like,
babe, it's the
what?
door that's open. It's it's a good contract and all these things, and the kids was going to be able to go to school, which was we knew what the next step we needed. I knew I could homeschool my kids up to about sixth grade. Once they got sixth grade, they
Yeah.
needed a better teacher than mom. Um,
Yeah.
and really, and Bryson had hit that point, and so that's how we ended up in China. So it wasn't difficult.
Got
Seemingly, I mean, again, at the time I was a trailing spouse, so it may have felt difficult to drag.
hmm,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So you were in China for how long? Oh, until recently, right?
Yes, for pretty much almost 7 years.
Wow. That's amazing. I think you're the only person I've ever spoken to who's been in China that long. Usually like 3 or 4 years and then they move on.
Yeah.
So it must have been a really good job, a really good opportunity. Now, tell us what happened when COVID-19 struck.
Oh,
Like, what made you decide to come back?
so it happened. COVID-19 happened during Chinese New Year. That's when we learned about it. And so
Hmm.
Chinese New Year, since we had been in China, we never traveled during that time. Like we would travel at Christmas, we would travel spring break, but because literally all the prices would hike up to travel during Chinese New Year, and we're a family of
Hmm.
four with one steady income. Um, we had
Yeah.
once we got there, we just began to realize like it's best not to travel during this time, and so we would always do staycations in the city during
Hmm.
Chinese New Year, and so that was kind of our plan.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and so all like friends was gone, people was away, and so we already had 2 weeks of kind of almost 2 weeks of feeling like a little bored, a little isolated because everybody's out and about, like away from the city, right? And when they started talking about this virus, I was like, okay, well, it's in Wuhan, we're fine. And then people in America every day were sending me messages, are you okay? Are you safe? You need to get out of there. And I'm like, what is going on? Right. And I mean, they're like all every day, family members, people hitting me up in my messages, you got to get out of there. And so what made us really leave was they started saying that they was going to put us on like restrictions on where we could go. You have to stay in your house. People couldn't come in and out of your apartment complex, right? So I said to my husband, I said, I don't know how long that's going to last, and I'm afraid of being isolated. Like I think it would drive me crazy to be in this apartment and can't move around. So
Yeah.
can we leave? And so we decided as a family to come back to America, thinking we would be here for a
Yeah.
few, maybe a month or so, and then go back um, to avoid the isolation. And here we are in America, and it's way worse.
We know we know what happened then. So life is what happens when we're busy making plans. So you were
Oh
making plans to
my
come
God.
back.
I told my husband the other day, I said, I need to pull out my vision board because I don't even remember what my plans were for 2020.
Don't worry, there isn't any plan. That's it. I think we had plans, and the world and Earth had its own plans, and right now we're just being part of the atmosphere, and it's all being handled by the Earth. So,
Yeah.
so how does it feel to be back in America?
Um, how does it feel? When we first got back, it was okay because we came back and we would always stay in my mom's house when we come back because when we left America, we sold everything. I never thought we would be gone for 10 years. I really thought we was going to do 2 years abroad and come back and save money and start over. And it
Yeah.
was like who wants to go back to America?
Yeah.
um, we got back here thinking again that we were only be here for a few months, weren't looking for work other than Dre knew he wouldn't re up his contract.
Hmm.
Um, so he was looking in that sense for like August, next school term. And then the more we were here, we was like, okay, this isn't changing. We can't
Yeah.
go. So he did land a job as a vice principal at a school here in North Carolina. We now
Awesome.
finally got our own place after living with my mom for about February, March, April,
So
May, June,
your
June,
the
for like
plan
3.
right now is to stay.
Yes, so the plan now is to stay. And so it feels better. Like it feels a little sad being home because all the racism, uh,
Yes.
you
That
know,
was my next, yeah, I was leading into that. So I'm
yeah,
glad that you brought it up because, as a mother of a young man,
yeah.
do you have any fear? Do you have this anxiety because of all the racial problems?
Yes and no. Like yes, I have it. I have some fear. Um, I won't know about the real anxiety of it until like if everything goes well, he's supposed to leave for school in late August.
Hmm.
Um, Sometime when I hear my son talk, he like Bryson loves to get out and about and he loves to walk because he grew up in Beijing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And he was safe there.
Yeah.
And my son literally sometime would be out, and some people could judge me for this, but it is our truth. He would be out to 2 in the morning with his friends, riding bikes or like through the city, like really weird things for teenagers. Um, or catching a DD or mom, me and the boys are gonna hang out and like go to some bar place and watch the soccer game. Like what should be normal, but for China he had that. So he loved the city life. He loved being able to the subway and moving, having the freedom to move without parental guidance. And so he's thinking when he moves to Minnesota, he's gonna have this freedom, and he's like it's a 20-minute walk from campus to the city, and I'm gonna do this and that. And when I hear him say stuff like that, I'm thinking, babe, you won't have the freedom that you had in China. Like you should have the freedom that you had in China, but you may not have the freedom that you had in. So that's when I get scared when I think of it like.
I would think that, with all that's going on, having a kid who's going to college, it's going to be really like nerve wracking, like you said, because they're off going to school and you're at home and you can't help but worry. And it's just amazing that the world has come to this. It seems like, you know, we won't name any names, but like the last 3 years have really been unhealthy for the country. And we're in this mess and nobody seems to know how to get out of it.
Yeah, it really feels never ever in America, like even when there was racial stuff, at least you had a leader who was speaking some level of unity or the importance of us all being Americans and coming together. I This is an extremely scary time as far as like who America
Yes.
is, who we become, and this like how everyone now. First of all, everybody thinks they're right, and nobody is like willing
Yes.
to just take time to listen to the other person. It's a really strange time. And yeah, having my
Yeah.
son go off to university so far away uh, definitely creates in me some emotional discomfort. But I try really hard not to focus on the negative, scary stuff. Because one of the things I promised myself, like my husband and I, we
Yes.
was real big on with the kids, that if the only reason for them to like stop them from doing something was fear, then that's not a good enough reason.
You just
So
have to pray that everybody's going to be okay, that something will change. Hopefully, the next election will bring, like, a little bit of unity like that we're clamoring for, and things will, well, it seems like from for now they
yeah,
can only get better. So, everybody just has to keep safe and
right.
try and keep themselves as healthy as possible. but it must feel weird to come from China that has flattened the curve to now be where chaos reigns in the street as far as the COVID-19.
Yeah, it really, like, I feel like we made the wrong decision. I feel like we maybe should, instead of coming home, we should have just sent for my daughter to come be there with us, but, you don't know at the time.
Exactly.
But
Very
yeah,
true.
we oftentimes feel like,
Very.
man, we left like a, what they say, leaving the pot to get in the fire or something like that. Like, yeah.
Yes. Oh, but hopefully everything will work out for the best.
Yeah, we're hopefully we're here
Now,
to see it.
I'm going to leave all your information as far as how they can get in touch with you um, on the nextbiteoflife.com podcast page. It'll have all the information on how to get in touch with Kanisha. And if you're interested in her coaching classes, her relationship coaching classes, and don't forget, even the links to her book,
Yeah.
Think Your Way to a Better Marriage. I love that title, by the way.
Thank you.
So I think it'll be great if they can connect with you.
That'd be awesome.
And Kanisha, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I apologize once again for the time difference and getting you up this early,
No
but
problem either.
it was fun. It was a fun time.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you later. And everybody listening, check out her website. It's called verythoughtfullife.com. So check that out. But like I said, we'll have the link on how to get in touch with Kanisha on the website and the post. So thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.